Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Green World in a Pod. And today we're here with Paola Masperi, who is the founder of Mayamiko Label and Mayamiko Foundation. We're gonna dive in immediately with her talking about her story. How did she get to where she is now?
Morning, Tanya. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to talk to you. So yes, where do we start? So I was born and raised in Milan in Italy, and then I moved to the UK towards the end of university and kind of ended up getting stuck here. But through that time, I spent some time working and across a number of African countries, as well as oddly living in Germany for 2 years, but that's sort of a different story. What first took me to Africa was a job, and it was about using technologies for education. And this was, I want to say, maybe 2003, 2004. So it was kind of, the time when people were starting to experiment with innovation and technology to support the Millennium Development Goals, which are now the Sustainable Development Goals. So one of the things we were looking at was, can digital technology support the delivery of primary education in developing countries? And through that, I started working with Ministry of Education across a number of African countries, particularly Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Malawi, which is where I did most of my work. And so over the years, I spent a lot of time there, connected with a lot of people, and just really kind of lived and worked there, sort of making relationships and really trying to understand if what we were proposing as a solution could really make a difference. And out of that came a very deep love for the continent in general and the country, and some really lovely, long-lasting friendships with people that have then over time transformed into something more. So, for example, the origin of Mayamiko was a very beautiful friendship with a lady called Kate Kanger, that at the time was the Minister for Education in Malawi, and then moved over to the Ministry for Women and Child Development. And so out of sort of that friendship and those long conversations came the origin of Mayamiko. So kind of potted version of the story, we started in 2008 as a charity. So the main purpose, which is still the purpose, was to work with women and provide them choices on training options that would then give them opportunities to choose ways in which they could get themselves out of poverty. So the concept was, what do women tell us that they need? What skills do they need? And what can we provide that will give them a choice to turn their life into something better for themselves and their families. And then I guess on the back of that, a couple of years into running the charity and providing training to women in tailoring and sewing and business skills and other sort of vocational skills, came the fashion label. So the label really came out of a desire to provide sustainable employment to at least some of the people that we had trained who desire to work in a more sort of permanent basis for us. And I suppose it was also experimenting with breaking away from a traditional charitable model that was reliant on donations. So we wanted to see whether we could make ourselves sustainable as an organization by making products and using the funds we generated through that products to grow the charity activities.
Who makes the designs?
So I do, but I didn't start that way. So I wasn't trained as a fashion designer, although I've always had an interest in fashion, sort of starting from my grandmother, who was a tailor and made all my clothes, and all the hand-me-downs from my sisters and cousins. They all got through the fingers of my grandma, who turned them into something amazing that felt better than new for me. So I've always had an interest, but I wasn't really trained. My background is in international development and marketing. So I suppose that's the angle that I came at. But then also being a Capricorn and being quite determined and stubborn, I decided that, if I was to run a fashion label, I really needed to learn everything there was to learn about it. And so I trained myself in the more technical sides of the job. So, pattern making, understanding garment construction, that kind of stuff. And then I sort of discovered the more creative side and started designing as well. And so it was a long journey, but over a few years, then I started designing all the collections, which I now design.
I remember when we met on a photo shoot, so I was very excited about that. I asked you if the designs are actually African or Malawi inspired, but you actually told me that they don't dress this way there. So I'm still curious to know what is their style there.
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting one. So quite a lot of the fabrics that we use are, people would, when they see them, they would recognize them as African inspired because they have that sort of association, the colorfulness, the shapes.
Yes, I think it's more of an idea that we have over here about African women, right. African style, African designs, the patterns, the colors and all of that. So
no, exactly. And it is true that if you land in most African countries, it won't take you very long until you see someone, wearing one of those fabrics either wrapped around their waist or on their head or having a baby, sort of carrying a baby with one of those. But it's interesting because actually the origin of those particular fabrics, so the wax prints that we use, because obviously Africa as a continent has got numerous types of fabrics that come from different regions and have different heritages and crafts. But the particular wax print that we use is of Dutch descent. So it's something that was first introduced by the Dutch settlers in West Africa, and then obviously spread across the continent. And so now you find iterations of that kind of concept of the wax print across the continent, and they're called different things. So in Malawi they refer to it as chitenge, and so that just sort of loosely as a term indicates any of those sort of bold prints and bold fabrics that are very colorful and have got those sort of either geometric or some sort of evocative shapes that we associate with the term African fabric, which is actually not the right term, but I think people, as you say, have kind of grown to refer to that as a concept, as an idea of fabrics. So we are trying to sort of take that and work with that. So we obviously colors and shapes and prints are part of the DNA of our label, but we're trying to reinvent this in a more sustainable and regenerative way. So we are now trying to work with local artists and recreate some of the shapes that are meaningful to them using natural dyes. So that will be block printed or baticked onto the sort of the plain cloth, but so that they have a true meaning and a true connection with the local artist. So it's something that is very important to me, but it's obviously quite complicated to realize, but it's definitely something that we are working on in the background.
Wow, that is quite something. I actually thought that Mayamiko the label is so much how can I say, like a front name, that I didn't know it actually came after or years after there was the foundation. But I also read, and I really liked how the foundation also works with other foundations, so supports other organizations. And there is one, but I think it was working with refugee girls with making pads, I think.
Yeah, so I have always been a massive believer in collaboration. I always think you can achieve more if you work with others, and you can learn from others. And in general, my attitude to life is that there's really no point in competing. There's much more point in collaborating. And so I guess even from a work perspective, this was always my attitude. So through the charity, we obviously manage and run our own programs, but we also collaborate with other like-minded charities where we can share our knowledge, our skills, or a product or an approach. So, for example, we have partnered with a couple of charities that work in refugee camps in Greece, and particularly on feminine health, maternal health, or girls' health. And one of the things that we do through them is we make and donate reusable sanitary pads for girls. I mean, this is obviously a very long and complicated conversation, but there's feminine health has got a lot of challenges anyways, as we know from the recent conversations around period poverty, even in the UK. Particularly, you can imagine in contexts like refugee camps, these challenges are, beyond what any of us can imagine. So accessing products, keeping clean, keeping healthy, keeping safe during your period, at all times, it's massively challenging. So these organizations do fantastic work. And we thought, actually, what can we do to support? We are about empowering women. Periods are a very natural part of every woman's life that we don't really talk about enough. So is there anything that we can do to help? And so the idea was quite simple. It was, okay, can we use the offcuts from our fashion productions to turn them into something really, really valuable? So we turned them into reusable sanitary pads. And I think what's nice about them, it's a few things. So they are colourful and fun. So they almost become like an accessory that particularly younger girls don't feel ashamed of. So they sort of remove that sort of sense of embarrassment, because actually there's something really beautiful and colourful that you have no shame about. And they also come in a little pouch, so they sort of look like a little bag. And then also, what was really beautiful for me was the fact that our own trainees and our own students, so women in Malawi, were making products that were helping women in a completely different part of the world. And you don't really hear that narrative very often. It's generally someone else helping them and them being the recipient of that help. And actually, I find that really disempowering, because yes, of course, there's a lot of work that goes into supporting women in certain contexts, but actually they are very empowered, very smart, very creative women that can do a lot to support each other. And so for me, that story was quite a nice one, where suddenly they feel now that they are helping women the other side of the world, and they're incredibly proud of it, and I'm incredibly proud of them for doing this. And overall, it's I think it's just one of those that sort of works all around. The initiative is good, the products are good, and it really has a positive impact on the people that make the pads as well as the ones that receive them.
Oh, well, I didn't think of it that way, but now it actually touches me, because if I then think about it, it's true that we look at ourselves as those always helping. Also, when we buy from an artisan or someone on the other side of the world, or we always feel that, oh, we are so helpful, we are helping them there, and we always keep these countries and these people somewhere there, that in need, and we lack the ability to even see maybe in which way they are helping us, or in which way they could help us, where their expertise is is valuable.
Absolutely. And I think it's that sort of that recognition of the value that comes from everywhere, really, and sort of that challenging our own our own values, not in themselves, but our own approach, our own value system. So what do we think is valuable? Where do we think we're helping? Where do we think we're actually being helped? So it's always an interesting one to, to keep challenging ourselves on sort of that view of the world.
Absolutely. One thing I really liked, one of the many things that I like about the Mayamiko label, is the fact that each, and I'm not sure if I'm right, but what I understood is each piece of clothing can be traceable. So like you can trace the person who worked on that clothing.
Yeah. So yes, so this is something that we launched last year. So I mean, obviously, let's be completely honest. We're a small outfit, so for us, it's a lot easier than for others to have that complete transparency over who makes what. So this is one of our shirts, and I know that I'm wearing, and I know exactly who cut it, who stitched it, who checked it, who packaged it, and so by no way I mean to say that this is as complex as it would be for a much larger organization, but it's actually something that we can do because we know absolutely everyone that works with us, and it's a way of honoring their skills and honoring just them being there and being people that contribute by making a product that then is bought and loved by someone else the other side of the world. And so you can scan the QR code, and a garment is touched by many hands, so it's not a one-to-one relationship. So when you scan the code, you end up on a landing page that tells you what team of people have made that particular garment. So Brenda washed the fabric and prepared it, Jane cut it, Ethel stitched it, and then Brenda went back and did the quality control, and then someone else did the packaging. So it's not transparency for transparency's sake. It's transparency. It's storytelling. It's sort of sharing the origin and the heritage of a product with the person who's going to love it and treasure it for a long time. And actually, what I believe is that if we have that deeper connection, we then are more likely to love and cherish and treasure our product. Yeah. If you think about your favorite garment or your favorite anything, it's not favorite because of the item in and of itself. That's just one thing.
It's a story behind it.
Yeah, who gave it to you? How was it made? What memories have you got associated with it? So that's sort of all of those things come in the way that we value the physical, and not just the physical, but the products that surround us in our day-to-day life. So it's honoring the people who make them, as well as it's got other sort of aspects to itself. So from a supply chain perspective, it means that we can trace exactly what products go in our garments, and eventually means that we can reuse them or recycle them correctly. So there's other implications, but I think the primary driver was really to kind of reignite that deep connection between us and the things that surround us, like our clothes.
I really like it because I remember when I was little, both my mom and my grandma used to make either a scarf or hat or a pullover, and that really stayed. Like you just know the time they put, the effort, the love they put into that, and there are certain things that, for example, even if I don't wear them much or they're really old but I have such a connection that I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna wear it until basically it just breaks into pieces. Like it's just the effect that it has on me when Absolutely. I wear it. And so knowing even that about your clothes, I imagine it's, in a way, each clothing carries a beautiful weight, as in a weight, a story, the person's hands and the care they put into it. So there's no way you can just, oh well, I'll throw it or treat it in a bad way, or
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, and I think that's really the message there. And it's not too different if you think about it. When you have a home cooked meal versus a ready meal, it's sort of that same dynamic. It's that sort of, it's the process, it's the care, it's the effort, it's the creativity that goes into it, and sort of it's a way of celebrating it. And I sort of feel, not just in fashion, but we have generally in our kind of fast-paced world lost that connection with a lot of the the reality that surrounds us, and I think kind of stopping or slowing down for a second to consider that, and it's just beautiful, and if we did more of that, I think we'd probably be more in balance with the surroundings and the world around us.
And I would like to read out your ethical promise. I know it's on your website, but I found it so beautiful and so something that should be implemented by everyone in probably not just fashion industry, but food industry. I think it really applies. And I would like people who are listening now to also get to know them. So Mayamiko's ethical promise includes no forced labor, freedom of association and the right to collective bargaining, safe and hygienic working conditions, no child labor, living wages, no discrimination, no excessive working hours, regular employment to be provided, no harsh or inhumane treatment, training and professional development for all employees, a nutritious meal every day, life skill sensation and individual support, support to set up independent businesses and cooperatives when desired, financial education and access to microfinance, loans and grants, pension scheme and gratuity. And when I read that, I'm like, shouldn't these be, like, the normal?
Yeah,
like, shouldn't this be the normal?
Yeah, no, exactly. And, this is it. So they are taken from the ILO, the International Labour Organization, as kind of the basic principles, and obviously then we work them up in what they mean to us. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think this is where this is what I was saying earlier, when we've sort of lost touch with the world around us. This should absolutely be the norm. We shouldn't really tolerate a world where anyone works in different conditions than that. But the reality is that it does happen. It does happen very, very frequently. And it doesn't just happen far away from us. It happens at our doorstep. It's sort of... I long for the day when that is stating the obvious, that you don't even need to say that anymore, because everyone knows that's just the basic, and that's what you need to know. So it's not, for me, I don't see that as a point of differentiation. For me, I just see it as, okay, and here's what we do, and here's what everyone should do.
Yeah, that's why you're, in a way, a leader in that. I mean, it's... with your label, you're showing that it's possible, that it's doable, and you're also setting a standard, like a new standard to be followed. And I think...
Yeah, and it's great because there's a lot of people now that are sort of following similar guidelines from the ILO and other kind of international bodies, and sort of telling that story, because I sort of feel like the more we say it, the more we speak it out loud, the more it becomes a reality, and the more people kind of have that instinctive reaction when that's not the case. They go like, oh, hang on a minute, that's not what I'm buying from you. What I'm buying from you is a product, but it's a product with those attributes, and one of them is that you treat your people well, because that's just kind of what it should be. So I think it really
treat
is that
people as humans. And
yeah, I mean, isn't that just basic?
Yeah. There are two more things that I would really touch with you. One is I want everyone to know that you're one of the winners of Common Objective 10 Leaders 2019 with Stella McCartney, Outland Denim, and Reborn, among others. What is that, and how did that impact you?
So, Common Objective is a lovely and wonderful organization that brings together, I suppose, anyone who's got an interest or a stake in fashion in whatever kind of shape or form, and is I suppose it's a network, but it's an educational body, and sort of there's wonderful things to push the sustainable and ethical fashion agenda forward. And I guess they've got this award where they recognise brands that they see as leaders in sustainability. And, we were lucky enough and blessed to be recognised last year as one of the 10 leaders in sustainability in fashion, among some very impressive names. So yes, I mean, I think one of the reasons the judges gave to sort of award us was, kind of really summed us up. So he sort of said, you don't need to be big to make a difference, which for me, both as a human who was quite small and as a company who was quite small, it's a lovely thing to have recognized, because often, if you're not of a certain size or a certain turnover, you don't really get considered for these awards. But actually it was really lovely that the judges really wanted, I feel, to make a point around actually it's about the quality and the way that you do things rather than your size. And for me, that's really important, because I feel so much of our day-to-day life or of our success as individuals or as companies is around scale and how big you are and how fast you grow. And actually, for me, scale always came, I don't want to say last, but, was never really a priority. I was more than happy to grow very slowly and very gradually, but grow in the right way. And so it was lovely. And obviously the judging panel were some pretty amazing people. So, there were editors of Vogue and GQ and CEOs of very large companies that sort of judged. So, all in all, it was great, and it was just lovely to be recognized.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the last thing is that I read on your website about organic cotton, the use of organic cottons, and how it's more sustainable than conventional. I don't like to use normal cotton because again, it's a wrong normality. We use the term normal in the wrong way, I think. But yeah, organic cotton versus conventional cotton. And I really thought that because I hear this organic cotton a lot lately, like everybody is trying to get a piece of it. So I have a bit of concern. And also I was wondering, well, if cotton drinks that much water, how is even organic cotton making a difference? But I would like to hear from you, because you did tell me before this interview about it.
Sure. Yes. I mean, look, I'm not a cotton expert, but I've been working with cotton for a few years now, so I can definitely tell you a few things. So we made the choice of working with a cooperative based out in northern Uganda that grows organic, certified, rain-fed cotton. So the reason why we made that choice for as many of our products as we can, not all of them yet, but hopefully all of them soon, but is that we saw a number of positive aspects to that choice. So one, it was a cooperative of local farmers that were getting a good income for a crop that, they look after, essentially 365 days a year. So it was actually the human side of it that was really important for us, as well as the environmental side. So their cotton is entirely rain-fed, so it relies entirely on the weather, which is why, again, climate change is a concern, because when the weather patterns change, then your crops, the impact on your crops can be quite significant, because obviously they might not receive water at the right time to allow them to grow and yield whatever it is that you're expecting from them. So it is a rain fed crop, and it's also in a context of other crops. So it's not an area of land that has been entirely taken up by cotton growers to and absolutely removed everything else, so that the community is now struggling, which is something that happens in other areas of the world. But particularly this cooperative that we work with, cotton is within the context of a sort of a healthy rotational type of crop management, and so both from a human and from a environmental perspective, it felt like a really wholesome choice. It's also not far from Malawi geographically, so it's great to be able to keep it within the region, if not, if you can't keep it within the same sort of country borders. So all in all, it felt like a good choice, and as we were saying earlier, we're hoping to be able to use that organic plain cotton as a base for working with natural dyes. So it just it's like a right step in the direction that we want to go, sort of building the right foundations. And it's just a really beautiful textile. It's just soft and kind on the skin.
Do you use
it's
other fibers as well, or just cotton?
No, so the colorful prints that we talked about earlier, they are conventional cotton. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's very hard to get those in organic certified cotton. But we also use linen, which is I suppose one of the more eco-friendly natural fibers, if you like. So it comes from the flax plant, which is a very resistant, sturdy plant that doesn't need a lot of water, and therefore has got a much lower carbon footprint. And it's a beautiful, beautiful fiber. And what we're looking now at using are also some blends, so perhaps a blend of linen and organic cotton. Because I think everyone that knows and loves linen knows that the one pet hate is that it really crinkles. It's really hard to get the lines out when you iron. So actually a mix of linen and organic cotton could be a really lovely compromise there. So yeah.
That's nice. Well, thank you very much for being part of this and for explaining us your world. Very fascinating, and I'm very curious about the next steps and how your brand and your foundation evolve. And so yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here, and it's always lovely to see you as the face of the brand when I look at the website.